injured in Wednesday's shooting in Ottawa and had to be taken to hospital by ambulance. Greg Peters of Surrey West serves as the usher of the Black Rod in Parliament. He was badly bruised during the frantic evacuation of the Centre Block building after a gunman shot and killed a Canadian soldier. But the veteran RCMP officer says there's no way he's going to let this incident slow him down. Greg Peters spoke with the CBC's Bruce Rainey.
You know, how you doing is normally a pretty innocent first question. In your case, though, I think it's relevant. How are you?
Well, Bruce, I'm great. It's a beautiful sunny morning here in Ottawa on a Friday morning, and considering what took place on Parliament Hill this week, I'm just very fortunate to be here, feeling good. My lower legs were injured as part of an evacuation out of Parliament 2 days ago. The fateful day of the shooting. But I'm feeling good. No fractures, bad bruising. But I was to work yesterday, business as usual. I performed the Speaker's Parade and put a full day in. So I'm just glad to be here. And what an incredible, surreal experience being in the Centre Block where my office is located as those events transpired.
Can you take me back to approximately 9:52 2 days ago and tell me, what transpired A to B to C,
Sure. Well, I was in my office getting changed in my dressing room, actually, put my official outfit on for some tours with a few senators when I heard over the radio that there was an active shooter situation in the building. At the same time I heard that, heard the gunshots and explosions, those kinds of things. And, of course, Parliament Hill, as you have to understand, is with the architecture, is a huge echo chamber. So as I stepped outside my office into the hall, of course, there was somewhat of a chaotic scene, but really not. It was well organized. The House of Commons Security, the Senate Protective Services were on the job. A stellar response internally in that building to getting employees and everybody that works there to safety. I was very, very impressed. Of course, I was moved to another location, and then that evacuation and protection process kicked in here.
Rumors here that you were shot or hit by a bullet. Is that true?
Not true. Bruce, in this day and age of Twitter and Facebook and social media, I think there was everyone was starving for information. It was very dynamic, a very fluid, a very fast-moving situation. And I suspect that when I was extracted out off the hill, and it was necessary to take me to the hospital to check out my injuries. I suspect that, when I was loaded into the ambulance, there were press in the area. I suspect that potentially that was the beginning of some of those stories taking on a life of their own.
A lot of stories, too, about you and a window, and that being the result of the cause of your leg injuries. Is that true?
Well, it was, no, not the window itself, but the extraction process, the evacuation process, it involved a bit of a jump, and I suspect that that's where I sustained most of my injuries.
Did you have to help people out through the window, Greg?
I did.
What was that like? What kind of pressure were you under at the time?
Well, you've got to, like I said before, Bruce, this is a dynamic, fluid, fast-moving situation where you've got gunshots, you've got you've got emergency vehicles arriving on the hill from all the various services, Ottawa Police, RCMP, emergency services, paramedics, and so on, fire. So it was very surreal, but I have to admit that with 32 years experience in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and having drilled and trained for many events, all the major summits across the country over the years, that training, it's like riding a bike, that training comes back to roost. And it provides you with a certain level of comfort as you engage in what is a very chaotic and a very fluid experience.
In your decades-long RCMP career, have you ever been involved in anything comparable?
No, I have not. I've served in Haiti with the United Nations in the civilian police. Back in 1993 as part of the first RCMP contingent. Similar in certain perspectives because there were some armed events I was involved in there. However, nothing like I experienced this week.
Greg, how important was it for you personally and for people philosophically just to get back to work yesterday?
Bruce, it was absolutely necessary to get back to work yesterday. I wanted to get back to work. I wanted to lead the Speaker's Parade from the Speaker's office in the Senate. Every Thursday is the long parade. So Speaker Kinsella instituted, since he's been the Speaker, the long parade from the Senate down the North Corridor through the Hall of Honor, down the South Corridor into the Senate chamber. So a very poignant parade yesterday, because it was the long parade through the Hall of Honor where the chaos occurred just the day before. We paraded down the Hall of Honor with the Speaker's parade into the Senate chamber. And of course, earlier in the day, the Speaker's parade for the House of Commons paraded down that same Hall of Honor. I think that ceremonial reality, and then that both the House of Commons and the Senate sat yesterday to show anyone out there, this shooter or anyone else planning anything, Canada as a country, gets back to business very, very quickly, and we will not be deterred by these kinds of acts. So it was so important, and I am so glad that we were back to work yesterday. Not only my office, but every part of the House of Commons and the Senate, the administration, was back to work, fully engaged. And that you have to think that a lot of these employees, Bruce, have been traumatized, and everyone deals with traumas like this in a different way. So, the human resource sector within the Senate, and I know within the House of Commons, is providing grief counseling and post-trauma counseling and so on and so forth. So that's really, really important, because as people come back to the building and they become engaged in the day-to-day business like they did yesterday, it's also important to offer them those services so that they feel comfortable and they can address any fears they have and deal with those as they evolve. But the sense of pride was evident, but also the sense of sorrow for the loss of life of that young soldier at the War Memorial. I finally dedicated my Speaker's parade to him and his family for what they must be going through at this very difficult time, and for the other members of the House of Commons Security Force that was injured.
I know people in Surrey West and PEI all across Canada are happy that you're back on the job and are recovering and are okay. Listen, back to work, enjoy, and thank you so much for the time.
Bruce, it's my pleasure, and thank you again to Islanders and friends that texted and called concerned about my well-being, and look forward to getting back to the island soon.
That was Greg Peters, usher of the Black Rod on Parliament Hill. He was speaking with Bruce Rainey, and Bruce will have some of that interview tonight on Compass.